All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Venture Lab's Female Founder Speaker Series. Today's guest, Katy Mallory. Katy Mallory is CEO and co-founder of SlumberPod, and we're delighted to have her back now as a second time guest speaking with our female founders. So thank you, Katy. And now over to you, Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm frantically texting my husband. I forgot to put the dogs in the office. Come get the dogs or they're definitely going to bark while I'm talking to Katy today. Thrilled to have you here, Katy, with us. And thank you for all of us who have joined us for today's speaker series. I am Melissa Hefner, one of the program directors with Georgia Tech's Venture Lab, and along with my colleague and friend, Sarah Henderson, co-created Female Founders, which is an entrepreneurship program by and for women. And today we are talking with SlumberPod co-founder and CEO, Katy Mallory. And Katy really has been gracious with her time the last 2 years and spoken with our female founders a number of times. We always have a great time chatting with you, hearing what you're up to, learning from you. So we're really excited that you're back with us, and welcome.
Thank you for having me, Melissa and Sarah and Leah and the rest of the group. I'm thrilled to be here, and I always walk away feeling empowered and excited, and even with some new ideas myself when I come and talk to this group.
Well, I want to take us back to SlumberPod's origins. And can you set the stage for us? Tell us about that sleepless night, or maybe there were multiple sleepless nights that week that ultimately led to you and your mom, co-founder Lou Childs, developing this privacy pod.
Sure. Well, I'm so glad you asked about this, because the problem definitely is the best way to explain our product and the journey that we've been on. So to go back to, I believe it was December of 2014, my daughter was about 1.5 years old, and we were sharing a room, my husband, my daughter, and I, at my mom's house for the Christmas holidays. And we were excited to be together with my siblings, with my mom, with my stepdad, and I have a big family, lots of half siblings, and people have significant others. So it was a full house. And we were thrilled to have a big bedroom, but the crib that my daughter, 1.5-year-old daughter, was sleeping in was just a few feet from the bed where my husband and I were sleeping. And there were blinds up, but a floodlight right outside the bedroom window was letting some light from that floodlight was coming into the room through the blinds. And our daughter, who was an amazing sleeper at home, slept in a blackout dark nursery by herself, kept waking up maybe every hour, every 2 hours, and seeing us across the room. And she was too young to really understand that she needed to go back to sleep. She was thinking, Mom, Dad, why are you here? You're supposed to wake up. We're supposed to wake up. And I don't know about y'all, but I really like and need sleep, like at least 7 hours of it. You don't want to be around me if I'm not getting much sleep. And those 2 nights, we got maybe 3 hours of sleep a night. And we couldn't even walk her around the house because there were people crashing on the couch. And what was supposed to be a really magical time of family togetherness ended up being a really miserable time where my husband and I were arguing about how to handle it. We were sleep deprived, and we ended up going home a day early, swearing off travel for quite some time. So once we finally got a little bit more courage to start traveling again, we looked online for some kind of solution that would provide a barrier, or like a privacy barrier, between us and our daughter, so that she wouldn't see us if we were sharing a hotel room or a room at a beach house. And I couldn't find anything. So I got a little bit creative, at least initially, and I started bringing 2 cheap camera tripods and stringing a sheet in between them and tying the sheet on with ponytail holders or twist ties. And that at least kept our daughter from being able to see us across the room. But if a room didn't have good curtains or other window treatments, it was still light in the room, so she would wake up early, or we'd have to tiptoe around. So we kind of knew that there was a problem, but didn't think of the solution right away. So you fast forward to summer of 2016, I was on maternity leave with twins, and my mom very graciously offered to spend a lot of my maternity leave with me. And she was up in the night doing diapers and feedings and things like that, either with me or by herself. And during that time, she said, Katy, that issue that you had back when you stayed at my house, I can't imagine that you're the only person, or that y'all are the only family that dealt with that challenge. And we should we should invent something. We should do it. And being people that don't like to sit still, on maternity leave with two tiny babies, when they were sleeping, we started watching entrepreneurship shows. We started networking with entrepreneurs in the baby space. We rewatched a lot of Shark Tank episodes. We listened to podcasts, and we joined an accelerator program, and we got serious about inventing what would ultimately become SlumberPod. So that 2016, if I can do math, I studied journalism, not math, 6 years ago, took us about 2 years to get our product ready as far as the design goes and juvenile product safety testing and getting the full marketing plan together. But we ended up doing $2 million in sales our first full calendar year in business, which was 2019. In 2020, we did $4 million in sales. And in 2021, we ended the year in a little over $9 million in sales. So it's been a really exciting journey that we can't believe started with this problem and a relatively simple idea back in 2014.
Yeah, and you've made so many great points, though. I mean, really, what we and our founders and what you figured out was what is a problem that needs solving. And you're right. Often we are our own customer, right? So we're able to identify it pretty quickly, but we're not alone. And I can remember many times. I mean, my daughter slept in a pack and play in a closet or in a bathroom with no windows, right? Because anything to keep her quiet and keep it dark. So I understand it. I also love that you shared with us that it was 2 years in the making when you first, from the idea to when you actually began to put something together. And I think we as founders feel like it should be more immediate, right? That seems like a really long time. I know in the scheme of life, it's a short amount of time, but all of the work that you had to do in those 2 years to ensure that you were set up for success for the long haul, I think it's really important that doesn't happen overnight, right?
No, it definitely doesn't, Melissa. And during that time, there were a lot of ups and downs. And there were times where we're like, gosh, we thought that we'd already be done by now. Is it even worth continuing to pursue this? Yep. But we tried to be optimistic. We tried to set short, near-term goals and milestones that would keep us going. But absolutely, it's not something that happens overnight. And when we pitched at the end of our accelerator program, we didn't even have a design that worked, honestly. Like the prototype we had somebody create, it didn't work. But we knew that we had an idea and that it was more about solving the problem than it was about having the design perfect at that point in time. So that was a reminder to us that you can't always have perfection in order to move forward.
Not at all. Great getting in the way of good, right?
That's right.
And that forward momentum. And I love that you mentioned that you set sort of smaller milestones so that you could see progress in between sort of larger things that you were trying to get done. Rachel is asking, how did you break through with a product with what she's probably assuming a very limited budget so that you launched more successfully?
Sure, that's a great question. So one thing that's noteworthy is that my mom and I both have marketing backgrounds. We don't have the same thinking preferences or personalities. Certainly we have a lot in common, and that's one of the things that helps us work more well together. And I imagine we'll talk more about that later. But using your expertise, whether your expertise is in marketing or in product design or in data analytics, and kind of using yourself as an internal agency of sorts. So we were fortunate in that we were able to write our own initial press releases and storyboard videos and come up with a shot list for photography and think about who our target customer is because we have those marketing backgrounds. So that certainly helped with budget, that we didn't have to outsource certain things. I will say, though, that with a product that is as expensive as ours, it's about $56 landed and it retails for $174.99. Even the act of buying inventory to get started, past all those legal fees and product design fees and safety testing, just buying the inventory is expensive. So we did realize pretty early on that we needed investors in order to bring our product to life. We were fortunate in that we could put in, I think my mom and I put in about $15,000 each over time. And certainly there's some privilege as part of that. But we pitched to investors at the end of this accelerator program in Columbus, Georgia, and were able to meet two private individuals as part of a larger group that we spoke with who believed in us, and they decided to fund us, and they own 24% of our company together. And that money, which was, I'm an open book, it was $120,000 that they invested in us out of the gate, allowed us to pay for a lot of those legal fees and the initial inventory to get started, product design, product safety testing. And certainly it would be nice if we owned more of the company, but we recognized that we wouldn't have been able to get off the ground if we wouldn't have had that outside investment.
Yeah. And you raised a really good point about the fact that you and your mom are very strong in terms of marketing. And that's one of the things that we talk to our founders about a lot is you don't have to be good at everything. What we try to help our founders do is identify what their strengths are, what they're going to bring to the table. And then from that, figure out where their gaps and build a team accordingly. So I imagine you and your mom have through the years built a team that supports you where you don't necessarily have strengths.
That's exactly right. We have. And both of us being marketers, my mom is more numbers oriented than I am, but even she is not a finance person. She's not naturally talented at forecasting or bookkeeping. So we hired an external bookkeeping service. As an aside, we realized after about a year that they were completely over their head, that they usually did, barbecue restaurants and lawn care service companies, and working for a larger or a growing e-commerce business wasn't their strength. So we found the right vendor. But in talking about this, it's a reminder that sometimes it makes sense to hire a freelancer. Sometimes it makes sense to get like a software as a service as part of your tech stack. And then with freelancers, you can realize, see over time, if you're using somebody for 30 or approaching 40 hours a week, it might be time, if your finances allow, to convert that position to a full-time position. But you don't have to start out of the gate with having employees, if that makes sense. You have to, absolutely, do what you need to do. And we're grateful to have that team of bookkeepers, a warehouse partner that helps fulfill our orders versus us trying to do that too. So absolutely, the team is critical.
So you mentioned the fact that you and your mom were able to invest some of your own money. And so I want to bring up that you were working full time through all of this. And actually, I want to congratulate you because you just left your full-time job to focus full-time on SlumberPod. So we did the math, 6 years now, you have juggled building SlumberPod and having your full-time role at Cox Automotive. And for those of us who are doing the math, you also have 3 small children while all this is happening. So how do you manage to keep all of the balls in the air? And how did you make the decision? How did you know it was the right time to focus solely on SlumberPod?
Sure. Great question. And thank you for the congratulations. It was scary to leave the structure and stability of a full-time job, especially after 12 years, but it did feel like time. So as far as keeping all the balls in the air, none of us are able to keep all the balls in the air at any given point in time. I mean, how can we be great founders, friends, mothers, if we're mothers, employees of full-time jobs, exercisers, all those things? I mean, some weeks you're going to be less social than other weeks. Other times, you might not exercise as often, or you may make a decision like I did that you're going to air dry your hair from now on, because dedicating 3 hours a week towards blow drying and flat ironing is not going to give you the return on investment that you need to keep growing your company. This is funny, but behind every founder, right, is a basket of unfolded laundry, or a laundry basket that needs to get put away. I mean, like literally, there it is.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's great.
But so part of it is about understanding that every week is going to look different. You're not going to be great at everything. You're not going to be as polished as the founders like Sarah Blakely that you follow on social media, because they have a much bigger team. And you know what? They probably also are not doing everything all the people that you admire are probably not doing it all well all the time. But some of the lessons I learned are that you have to be creative with your time. So I have memories of driving to work when we all actually commuted almost every day, and my breast pump was going like while I'm having a networking call with like a male founded company. But my mom's texting me like, "Is that your breast pump going?" I'm like, "What? It is," and I'm trying to mute it when I'm not talking. But also like, she wasn't frustrated with me at all, but
no.
more than anything
Maybe
else.
it likely most of the people on the call didn't recognize the noise.
Exactly. It was a car noise maybe, but
yes.
That was how I had to do it. I didn't have the luxury of making separate time to, sit in a quiet room in front of a computer and have a networking call. I had to find time. So if you know that you really need to take a walk, to get out of the house, use that 30 minutes to have a networking call at the same time. You could take a couple of quick notes on your phone. So that was one thing that we did. Also, knowing that I had a partner in this was another way to quote unquote, do it all or do more. So dividing and conquering with my mom, who is incredibly efficient, productive, smart, optimistic, was a really huge piece of this. And I guess to go back to the first point is some of making some sacrifices, knowing that they're going to be short term and you're going to eventually get more help on your team, or have additional founders join that are going to be able to share in the activities with you. And then to your question about how did I know it was time, at least for me personally, Melissa knows, we were actually talking about it right before the call. I'm a huge extrovert, like 12 out of 10 extrovert. Are you going to nod? Yes, maybe.
Yes.
And I did worry for a little while of whether or not joining SlumberPod would feel too small, because I'm used to interacting with a lot of different people on a variety of topics. So would I be happy working from home? With it just being me and my mom. But now that we have 5 full-time employees total, I knew that there would be more interaction, even if it was over the computer. So it won't just be me and my mom. I'll be managing our head of product management, as well as our head of marketing, and doing a lot of our biz dev activities, as well as working with my mom and being able to spend time with other founders to compare notes and think about marketing strategies or other growth strategies. So that was a big piece of it. But it also got to where it was just too much. Certainly your work-life balance is going to be tough in early years as a founder. But especially now that we were past those early years, it didn't feel sustainable to try and have a full-time job that was often more than 50 hours a week and spend time on SlumberPod and feel like it was fair to my mom. So you have to think about the other people that you're in the business with. So my mom was carrying a lot of weight on the business, and it seemed like it was time for me to help her. And also, of course, critically important is checking your numbers. Do you have the cash flow in order to sustain or support bringing on another full-time team member? And we felt like we were at the point where we did.
Okay. I want to pull on the networking thread just a little bit, because we've actually had a question in chat as well. And April's asking, how are some of the ways you were able to find a network with other brands or businesses in the baby space or even outside? I mean, where did you start with your networking?
Sure, that's a great question. Some of the companies are people that we either knew, like we started with saying like, oh, my high school friend's brother JJ started a company called Mission Mighty Me that does peanut puffs to help reduce allergies. You have them when you're a baby, and then the likelihood of allergies get reduced. So I was like, oh, I could talk to JJ. And then one tip that I used with him and that others have used with me is when you're speaking to somebody at the end of the call saying like, knowing that we're trying to learn from other entrepreneurs, do you have any contacts either in the baby space or other entrepreneurs that you feel like we would have enough in common with that you'd be open to introducing me to? And almost always somebody says, oh, actually I do. And as a side note, it's critically important to say thank you to the people that you spend time with, whether that's a 2-line text message or ideally a, email with a couple of bullets of key takeaways or things that you learned as a result of that conversation. I would think that that would be a no-brainer, but it's amazing how often I hear nothing from someone after we talk, like no text, no quick Facebook message. So, ask the people, show appreciation for the people you network with, and then also ask them who else they might be able to introduce you to. And then I also have to share that we cold called or cold emailed a bunch of Shark Tank companies. And I believe every single one of them took the time to meet us, and they didn't know us from Adam. So we put together, I guess, like a little pitch email of here's who we are, here's what we're trying to do, here's why we admire your company, and here are some of the things we would love to learn from you if you are willing to share 30 or 45 minutes of your time with us. Most people ended up giving us an hour, whether that's on your commute or during a walk or in your morning routine, whatever's convenient. And I really believe that all the companies, probably 8 or 10, said sure. And we met wonderful people who continued to introduce us to more people. And then I could talk about networking all day long, especially as a more outgoing person. But last thing I'll share, unless you have more specific questions about it, is that we also created a group called For Parents by Parents, along with a couple of other baby products companies on Facebook. And it's a place where companies that started around the same time, that have similar client or similar customers, can all talk about what types of digital advertising is working best, what shipping software seems to be the least glitchy, Instagram influencers to avoid because they ghosted after being sent a product and a pretty hefty investment. Right. And that group has been a godsend for accountability, for commiserating, and for learning best practices. And there are about 40 other companies that are part of that group. And it's free. It's self-curating. We take turns maybe once a month planning some kind of webinar, and we're learning in there all the time.
Yeah. You might be a natural networker and an extrovert, but you've named some things that those of us who are not, who are more introverted, can do, right? Follow-up emails, follow-up texts, Facebook groups, Facebook messaging. Those are things we can do that feel a little bit, within our comfort zone if we are quite so extroverted. So yeah, just those little details, it sounds like, can make a big difference in terms of the relationships that you're building. Because I imagine it's all relational with what you're doing.
Absolutely it is. And that also reminds me, Melissa, that if you feel like you're not as comfortable kind of in the moment, to come up with a list of 8 or 10 questions that you want to ask on that call. You could even send them to that person in advance. And perhaps those people would prefer to email you back instead. Of course, a conversation is going to allow for more back and forth and digging into specifics, but there are a lot of ways that these conversations could be done, and planning ahead can certainly make it feel more comfortable. And
absolutely. Walking into a conversation with a plan makes a huge difference.
And I'm not looking at all the chats, but I saw one just kind of pop up about, is that group public? It is a private group for now, because the For Parents by Parents group, because we decided early on that we were only going to allow one of each type of company in there. So if there were 2 people that were bib companies, if there's a bib company in there, the person who owns the bib company has the first right of refusal on allowing another company in, or like a baby carrier or a baby mat. So we've kept it closed for now so that we can make sure with other members that they're comfortable with more people being added. But if there are other juvenile products companies on the line, I would invite them to reach out to me via email or via LinkedIn and share a little bit more. Do that anyway, honestly, but share a little bit more about their company and why they'd be interested in joining the group. And hopefully we could make an introduction and get them in.
Okay, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned Shark Tank. And I think we'd all like to know, what is it really like?
Sure. That's such an interesting question. And it also would be interesting to hear answers from different people. I have a feeling, or an internal hypothesis, that they choose some companies that they feel like are going to not have their act together on TV and exploit might not be the right word, but use them for entertainment purposes. And then they might also pick companies that they say, okay, I think these people are going to be pretty buttoned up and they're going to do a good
Mhm.
job. And we were fortunate that our producers, I believe, really believed in us, and we had a really great experience. We kept waiting for the sharks to tear us down about something, but we worked really hard to be prepared, not just with our pitch, but we put questions and answers on index cards and memorized them like flashcards. And we decided mom would take these questions, I would take these, so we weren't stumbling over each other. So we worked really hard to be prepared, and I think that paid off. But a couple of interesting kind of behind the scenes things about the show. They truly, the sharks do not know anything about the companies when you come out. So all they have is a blank piece of paper, and everything that they write down is all that they know. So you might be in there for between 30 minutes and 2.5 hours, which gets cut down to only 5 or 7 minutes. So if you see a rough moment, it's highly likely that there was a really uncomfortable part of the taping, and that's what the editing decided to focus on, but the rest of it was really positive. So it's, I guess the takeaway is that it's hard to know exactly how the whole segment went down when you're only seeing a small piece of it. But fortunately for us, ours went well, and that came across in the edit. And also noteworthy or interesting is that a lot of the deals that close on the show don't end up closing in real life. I think we read that it's something like 30% or 40% of the handshake deals close, and the rest fall apart in due diligence. And ours is actually an example of that too. So even though we represented ourselves accurately, didn't do any miscalculations, our shark, Barbara Corcoran, decided after months of due diligence, they really hoped that we were already, or wanted us to already be in Walmart and be in Target, even though we said that we were only online. So they ultimately very politely and diplomatically walked away from the deal. But that meant that we got all the exposure and didn't have to give away any of the equity. And for all intents and purposes, it looks like we got the deal, and we're contractually obligated to not mention that it didn't go through for 2 years after the show taping. But now that we're past that, we can talk about it.
You're past that now. Yeah. So thank you for telling us, giving us a little bit of a glimpse, and had no idea that those conversations could last over 2 hours. That's wild.
And for that reason, that's why they encourage you to keep up your energy and stamina for the entire conversation, because they don't, you don't know what part of the cut they're going to end up using. So if your energy dwindles, you're at higher risk of either not getting a deal, for one, but also not making it on the show, because they tape more episodes than they end up needing, just in case ABC comes back and they order more. So you really have to be on your game if you want to make it on TV.
It was fascinating. I went back and rewatched it this week. I'd watched it when we first talked about this in 2020 and rewatched it, and just I love that you pulled out jumper cables as an example of how you were trying to keep the sheets
like
attached
a sheet on the bed. That's a true story. Somebody told us that.
Yeah, it's really smart, actually. I mean, jumper cables have got a good grip. So reflecting on everything that's happened to you since you and your mom were juggling the twins and thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. Sort of what stands out to you the most? What are you most proud of? What do you think is sort of your big takeaway in terms of learning about you and your capabilities and your strengths?
Sure. Gosh, there's a lot that we could cover here. One of the things we're most proud of is that we are truly helping families enjoy life more, because when you're traveling and you have a sleep deprived child and you're sleep deprived, nobody's having fun, and therefore your memories are going to be a little cloud, have a rainy cloud over them, or you're going to not want to travel as often. And having that feedback from clients or customers is what keeps us going. And it's a reminder that we are nothing without our customers. So everything has to be with the customer in mind, whether that is the way our website is designed, the way we respond to customer service emails, the way that we think about our product roadmap. So I would probably say most of all, I'm proud of how we have connected with our customers, created a sense of community with them and continued to put them first through every step of the process.
Yeah, that you're absolutely right. And you're preaching what we practice at Venture Lab with our customer discovery and empathy building, and really trying to get into the mindset of the stakeholders that you want to provide a solution for, so that you provide the right thing to really solve the problem that everybody's experiencing. Okay, I'm gonna wrap with this. We've got a lot of female founders on the call. I know just from past experience, we've got women who are already working on projects, those who are thinking about dipping their toe in the entrepreneurial space, but they're a little nervous. What piece of advice would you give someone who's just starting the journey? What do you wish you'd known in 2016?
It's a rewarding, but can be really challenging and roller coaster of a journey. And my biggest advice probably is that it's important to have accountability. And that's not just accountability to yourself, but setting up accountability with others. And being part of this Venture Lab group is a very important step in that. I would say that getting a strong co-founder, if you have somebody who's equally passionate about your business and who is a good complement to how you work, not like crazy different where you're oil and water, but also not the same type thinking preferences, is another way to get accountability. To pair up or get into trios with people that you've met in this group or other entrepreneurs, and ask each other, like, can you help me hold me accountable for meeting these deadlines? Can you do like a every 2-week powwow where you talk about your progress? Because it can get really easy, especially as busy women, to say like, oh, I'll just do that next week. And then next week becomes the next week. And something that already can take some time, even if you're working hard to keep building, is just going to continue pushing out, and your momentum is going to get slowed. And then you may be more likely to give up if you're only seeing small wins here and there. So I'd say my biggest advice is to set up accountability for yourself so that you can make the dreams that you've thought so long and hard about come true.
Yeah. And have someone else to commiserate with too when it gets tough.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Thank you, Katy. Thanks so much for chatting with us, for your honesty. Love just how you lay it all out there. And we're getting the chat. So many people can relate. We've posted your LinkedIn in the chat so folks can connect with you. So thanks for offering that. And we'll see everyone next month for our Female Founders Speaker Series with actually our Female Founders Benefactor. So more on that to come.
Very cool.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.